The Russian government urged the Israeli regime to stop its provocations against the people of Iran and to cease the conflict in the region. The Venezuelan Attorney General presented evidence where Brazilian President Lula da Silva manipulated an alleged accident in order to not attend the 16th BRICS summit. And in Uruguay, the distribution of ballot boxes and electoral material for Sunday's general elections moves forward. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the TeleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. The Russian government urged the Israeli regime to stop its provocations against the people of Iran and to cease the conflict in the region. The Russian Foreign Ministry expressed its concern over the recent conflicts sparked by Israel against Iran, which threatened to fracture the stability and security in the region. In this sense, the diplomatic headquarters urged the parties involved to put an end to the violence and prevent the events from turning into a catastrophic scenario. According to the Russian government, the main cause of the tensions in the region is the Israeli genocide against the Palestinian people, which could not be resolved by the Security Council and the United Nations General Assembly. Information Minister Ziad Makari says Lebanon has filed complaints with the United Nations after 3 journalists were killed by Israeli strikes in the country's south.
Unfortunately, yesterday we lost 3 dear journalists from 2 respected Lebanese media institutions. Additionally, as you know, a war is being waged against Lebanon, and the media is largely part of this war. The Foreign Ministry, within its authority, has filed complaints with the High Commissioner for Human Rights and the Special Rapporteur on Freedom of Opinion and Expression in Geneva. I believe additional complaints will be submitted to the Security Council and UNESCO.
The Palestinian resistance Hamas called for a massive protest to condemn the Israeli occupation and the crimes committed in the occupied territories. The Palestinian resistance movement urged the international community, especially the Arab and Islamic nations, to show solidarity with the Palestinian cause and to reject the genocidal acts against the Palestinian people. Hamas also denounced that the Israeli offensive has claimed the lives of at least 42,847 Palestinians and has left more than 100,000 injured. In this regard, the international community condemns the Israeli offensive and calls for a march in the Gaza Strip in order to stop the war and the Israeli invasion. And in Yemen, millions of people rally in solidarity with the people of Palestine and Lebanon and in loyalty to the martyr leaders of the resistance. Demonstrations were held in more than 300 central squares and in different cities and districts of Yemen's governorates. The participants carried Yemeni and Palestinian flags, freedom banners and resistance flags, in addition to pictures of martyr leaders and posters condemning the crimes against humanity committed by the Zionist army. And the leader of the Iranian Revolution, Ayatollah Sayyid Ali Khamenei, expressed his condolences for the martyrdom of the leader of the Lebanese resistance. Sayyid Hashim Safi al-Din Khamenei pointed out that Hezbollah once again protected Lebanon against the threat of the Israeli regime. He also appreciated the wisdom and courage of the martyr leader for defending the Lebanese people. And Iran's air defense successfully intercepted an Israeli aggression against military centers in Tehran. The Iranian integrated air defense systems reported limited damage to several areas following the Zionist regime's action. The Defense Ministry said investigations are still underway to determine the extent of damage. In turn, the ministry assured that the Israeli aggression was carried out despite repeated warnings from the Iranian government. The Defense Ministry urged the Republic to remain calm and united. It also asked citizens to follow the news related to the Israeli attacks through national media and to avoid rumors spread by the Israeli occupation. Let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at TeleSUR English, where you'll find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back. In the United States, President Joe Biden apologized for the abuses committed in boarding schools against indigenous children for 150 years. Biden presented an apology on Friday for the atrocities committed with the kidnapping of thousands of indigenous children who were placed by the state in schools where they were abused and forced to forget their culture. During a speech in the Gila River Indian community in Arizona, Biden called the system imposed by the government one of the most horrific chapters in the history of the United States. It's important to remember that for over a century, the United States operated hundreds of boarding schools across the country to put indigenous children through a forced adaptation to the culture of the European settlers, including their conversion to Christianity.
And the federal government mandated the removal of children from their families and tribes, launching what's called the Federal Indian Boarding School era. Over a 150-year span, 150 years, from the early 1800s to 1970, one of the most horrific chapters in American history. We should be ashamed. A chapter that most Americans don't know about. The vast majority don't even know about it. Quite frankly, there's no excuse that this apology took 50 years to make. The Federal Indian Boarding School policy, the pain it has caused, will always be a significant mark of shame, a blot on American history.
The Venezuelan public ministry presented evidence where Brazilian President Lula Silva manipulated an alleged accident in order not to attend the 16th BRICS summit. Venezuelan Attorney General Tarek William Saab pointed out that Lula Silva's alleged accident was a hoax to veto Venezuela, evading his responsibility before Russian President Vladimir Putin. In this sense, Tarek William Saab said that the rumor was corroborated after the release of a video where the Brazilian president is seen healthy in use of his faculties. Saab assured that the Brazilian head of state should be investigated after his reappearance smiling and unharmed, being in evidence that he used such accident to lie to Brazil, to the BRICS, and to the whole world. And in Venezuela, the President of the National Assembly, Jorge Rodriguez, condemned the incitements of hatred from the extreme right wing and the illegal financing granted by the United States with money from stolen state companies such as Citgo. During the meeting of the Special Commission for the Revision of the Electoral Laws in the state of Anzoátegui, Rodriguez reiterated that if in the future the far right wants to do politics in the country, it will have to do it without calling for hatred as dictated by the Venezuelan Constitution. Likewise, the President of the Venezuelan Parliament emphasized that the activity that gathers more than 24 political organizations has the objective of promoting the correct fulfillment of future electoral events and protection of citizens.
¿Usted quiere hacer política? Venga, haga política.
You want to do politics, come and do politics. You cannot call for violence. You cannot call for invasions. You cannot call for hatred. You cannot have fascist expressions. You cannot receive money from foreign governments. That is what hurts them the most, because they are financed by the United States Agency for International Development, because they are financed by supposed non-governmental organizations that are not political extremism, because they are financed by the money they stole from Citgo. And we really have to regulate this, because the penalties that a political party receives, for example, because it is financed by a foreign government that is hostile to the country, are ridiculous.
And in Italy, several towns in the central region have been partially flooded after torrential rains hit the country over the last few hours. According to preliminary reports, such towns as Ribera, Castellina, and Santa Luz have sustained constant rains. Rivers have overflown, and there have been some landslides, which have caused many houses and streets to be flooded. Authorities foresee the rains in Tuscany region will continue through the weekend, and they call on citizens to remain alert and to follow advice from the authorities. And in Georgia, the ruling Georgian Dream Party leads the crucial parliamentary elections according to early results announced by the electoral body. The Electoral Commission reported that with 70% of precincts counted, the governing party had won 53% of the vote. The opposition coalition garnered 44.1% of the votes. Some 58.94% of the 3.5 million registered voters cast their ballots. Earlier, the governing party as well as the opposition groups claimed victory, each pointing to different exit poll numbers. We have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to visit our YouTube channel at TeleSUR English. There you'll be able to rewatch our interviews, top stories, special broadcastings, and more. Hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Final short break, don't go away. Welcome back. In Chile, a two-day municipal and regional election has begun, which will set the tone for the upcoming legislative elections in 2025. At least 15.5 million citizens are summoned to the polls over the weekend to choose candidates to 2,900 local positions for a four-year term. There are over 18,000 candidates competing for 16 governorships, 345 mayoralships, 2,256 councilman posts, and another 302 regional councilman positions. It is mandatory to vote in the elections, and whomever skips it without justification will be fined. The distribution of ballot boxes and electoral material for Sunday's general elections in Uruguay moves forward. Likewise, the Interior Ministry and the Armed Forces deploy security measures to guard more than 7,000 polling stations throughout the country. More than 2 million voters are called to exercise their right to vote. Citizens will elect the president and parliament members who will have their responsibility to lead the country during the next 5 years. And in Argentina, the government auctions more than 1,000 public real estate and properties for $800 million US. Presidential press spokesman Manuel Hadorni informed that the state property management agency is going to auction 400 properties and put another 800 properties up for sale. According to the government, the purpose of these auctions is to reduce expenses that it considers unnecessary for the state. Local media warned that among these properties that the state may auction is the building where the now defunct Ministry of Women, Gender and Diversity used to operate. The sources warned that the initiative is part of the policy of cuts and fiscal adjustment promoted by the administration of President Javier Milei. And in Brazil, social movements mobilized ahead of the runoff for the municipal elections this Sunday, October 27th. Left-wing and far-right candidates are vying for the office in some 15 state capitals. Citizens of some 52 Brazilian cities will go to the new electoral date, among them the city of Sao Paulo. Mobilized citizens denounced that the administration of the current mayor of Sao Paulo is promoting the privatization of companies and public services. And in Colombia, the Inter-American Conference of Ministers of Labor took place, where issues that affect the development of workers were addressed. More details in the following report.
Bogotá
hosted the 22 Inter-American Conference of Ministers of Labor, which brought together 28 delegations from the Organization of American States. 15 ministers complemented by the participation of vice ministers and international observers. The conference addressed issues such as the debate generated between labor and technologies, as well as the formulation of policies aimed at reducing informality gaps in the region.
For us, this conference is vital, and it is very important that it is held here in Colombia because it allows us not only to articulate and build the agenda for the region, but also because of a very particular emphasis on the debate with technologies and, above all, the articulation between education, training, and work. And we also have a big point that is the motto of this conference: the future of work in the Americas, cementing peace, social justice, and climate action.
Cimentando la paz, la justicia social y la acción climática. Un problema estructural.
A structural problem addressed was the high rates of informal labor. According to the International Labor Organization, Out of a universe of 282 million employed people in the region, 50% are in informal labor. For trade unions, this is explained by the neoliberal policies implemented by right-wing governments in Latin America and the cyclical changes in alternative or leftist governments that do not allow the consolidation of a policy that benefits these sectors.
For Latin America, it is evident that we are still a long way from achieving those labor rights, and I am not only saying this for Colombia but for the rest of Latin America where unfortunately, with the comings and goings of democratic governments and ultra-right governments, they are definitely taking away part of those labor rights as well. I think the case of Brazil and today Argentina are the most emblematic of all.
Artificial intelligence in the workplace was also the subject of debate, analyzing how it has impacted labor relations, unbalancing the guarantees for workers on digital platforms. Here, a regulatory framework is required to protect the rights of these people without circumventing the labor jurisdiction.
On a normal day for us, we start the workday at 7 or 8 a.m. working until 6 or 7 p.m. So we do not work an 8-hour shift. For us to even achieve a goal of 100,000 pesos, we have to work a minimum of 12 to 14 hours straight, exposing us to the rain, to the traffic. Exposing us to the risk of being hit by a car, and it is really a very long day to be able to generate enough to support our family.
This conference ended with the appointment of Colombian Labor Minister Gloria Inés Ramirez as president of this organization. She stressed the importance of increasing the minimum wage for Colombians as negotiations approach. The meeting also brought up the need to promote and prepare a global charter on labor rights that would establish common minimum standards on aspects that affect all countries.
Hernán Darío Tovar Gaitán, TeleSUR, Bogotá, Colombia. De las Américas.
The U.S. government ordered the evacuation of its diplomatic staff after surviving an attack by criminal groups that plagued the country. The U.S. diplomats were traveling in 2 armored vehicles through the town of Taparra when armed groups opened fire on the caravan. Although there were no casualties, Washington will return the delegation of at least 20 officials because it cannot guarantee their safety due to the increase in hostilities caused by the actions of criminal armed groups in Port-au-Prince during the last few months. We have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website, telesurenglish.net. Also join us on social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.